When you're doing some shopping, walking your dog, or going for a jog, street lamps light your way, keeping you safe and comfortable. But all of this light requires a lot of energy, costing the city a lot of money and producing harmful CO2. That's why many cities have switched to more energy-efficient LED light bulbs. A smart move. And some are going one step further with the Smart Space project. In cooperation with 2 enterprises, 3 universities, the Flemish grid operator Fluvius and the Lucy Association. These 4 European cities will install a pilot for smart lighting systems, one that helps them to reduce CO2 emissions and energy costs, while still keeping their citizens safe and comfortable. Because smart lighting is not about turning off the light, it's about providing the right amount of light in the right place at the right time. Instead of one size fits all, a smart lighting system uses technology to measure the need for light per area. Maybe there's a lot of light from surrounding buildings. Maybe a cloudy sky is making everything darker. Or maybe Valentine's Day demands some mood lighting. A smart lighting system knows that and adjusts the street lamps in that area accordingly. It's a small change, but a big difference for the city and its people, and for our planet. That's why 12 European partners in the Smart Space project are working together, creating a roadmap and a toolbox that can help other cities to implement a smart lighting system as well. Want to know more? Check our website.
Good morning. Welcome to you all. We're very happy to see so many of you joining to this final conference of the Smart Space project. You've actually had the chance to see our introduction video 2 times, so I'm sure you don't have any questions left about what this project was and what the aim and the purpose of this cooperation between cities, knowledge institutes, networks and companies from Northwest Europe has been about. Today, we would like to show you what 4 years of cooperation have resulted in terms of tools, of examples, of demonstrations and experience in different cities across this territory that you've just seen. When it comes to introducing smart lighting solutions, the types of solutions that you can find, the ways you can apply it, and the steps that you have to take and the obstacles that you might have to overcome to actually successfully introduce smart lighting. My name is Taco, like I said, and you've heard perhaps, and I sit here on behalf of the lead partner of the project, the City of Oostende, and we would like to welcome you all very much on screen. It's a pity that we are not able to actually see each other in person, in real life, and actually go on site and see some smart solutions in practice. This is for the future. Today we have to deal with our screens and make the best of that. So we're happy with all of you joining. Apart from partners in the Smart Space project, also a special welcome to those of you who are members of the Lucy network, who've actually taken the trouble to move your monthly get-together, virtual get-together, to actually coincide with this conference. So we're very happy to see so many of you participate as well. Before we go into listening to our speakers, we would like to very quickly learn a bit more about you, our audience. So we have prepared a very short poll to find out where you are from and also what kind of organization you represent. So if you would please take a minute or a second to actually click which country you are from, and then identify the kind of organization that you represent, so that you as an audience, but also our speakers, will have a little bit of an impression of the kind of audience that we are talking to today, and to what extent and in what way smart lighting can actually play a role in your work and in your practice. In the chat already, I can see that there are countries represented that are not on the list. I see somebody greeting us from Moscow. So I'm afraid I have to say that you will have to check the others box, but nevertheless, very welcome. Let's see where the others are from. I don't think I've seen the second question yet, maybe a question to our technical support. There we go for the first question. So I see a lot of you are from Belgium and from the Netherlands, and then some from France and Ireland, of course, the countries that were represented in the consortium of the Smart Space project. And then there's this broad and mysterious category, other. We see some of you, I see Iceland as well, Russia. So it's a wonderful global audience that we have here. Now, can you tell us what kind of organization you are from? Are you a government representative? Do you work for a local or a regional authority? Or are you in a business setting? Or is your angle to this topic more from a knowledge or a university perspective? If you could also please identify yourselves in terms of your professional background, then I'm sure that our speakers will strike the right tone. And well, we have actually all of these flavors represented in some form of the other in the Smart Space project. So I think for all of you, there's something to gain and something to learn from listening in today, and also from diving deeper into the different smart space projects, products and outputs that you will hear about today. So maybe we can see the results of this poll as well. A lot of you local authorities or regional authorities, actually the ones that are pushing the buttons when it comes to introducing smart lighting. And then there's a nice even representation as well from the business and the knowledge community. Welcome to you all. We're very happy to have this diversity on the table. It's going to be an interactive event. You will have the opportunity to raise questions to the speakers. You see on the bottom of your screen a Q&A field where you can actually go and enter your questions. We will collect them behind the scenes, and I will then put the questions that we have collected to the consecutive speakers. You will also have the possibility to upvote a question. So if somebody else actually raised a question that you think was super nice, then you can simply give it a thumbs up, and we can definitely see that this is an important question for everybody. If we are not able to answer all questions in the course of today's webinar, because they are perhaps of too technical in nature or there are simply too many, we will come back to you with written answers to questions that have been left out of the webinar. So in any case, we will make sure to come back to every one of you that has asked us questions to answer on what you would like to know. Finally, but I don't have to tell you this, I think there's a chat function. You are actively using it already, and this is where everybody can share their thoughts and experiences today. So don't hold back. We are recording this webinar, as you've seen, so there will be the opportunity to look back later on, and you can also share this with colleagues. And finally, we have a small special treat today. You will see this in the course of our program. Apart from our speakers, we have invited an artist. Her name is Nienke Zijlstra, who is, as we speak, doing live drawings of what we are talking about in the conference. And every so often, we will turn to Nienke and she will show us how visually she actually translates the things that we are talking about today into art. I think that's enough for the introduction. It's time to start talking about what Smart Space has all been about. And I would like to introduce to you our first keynote speaker. His name is Dr. Philip Ross, and he's an actual lighting millipede. He was schooled as an industrial designer at the technical universities of Delft and Eindhoven in the Netherlands. He works as a designer artist, and he runs a design agency called Studio Philip Ross, which is based in Eindhoven and which focuses fully on smart lighting, and is here today to talk to you about the Cities Guide for Smart Lighting, which was developed by Smart Space and the Lucy Network. So Philip, the floor is yours. Please tell us all about it.
Thank you very much, Taco. A Cities Guide to Smart Lighting. It's a white paper from cities for cities about the why and how behind smart lighting. And in my presentation, I will briefly touch upon the process, because it's a special co-writing process with cities and experts. And I'll treat some paper highlights, so the way we view smart lighting and the two main questions of the paper, why smart lighting and then how to. But first, why this white paper? Well, actually, within the Lucy network, cities are confronted with the question of how to deal with developments towards smart lighting. It's fairly new, and it's an influential development, and cities are wondering how, should we step in, and if we do so, how can we use the smart lighting for the benefit of the city, its citizens, and the common good. And because these sounds were emerging inside of the network, Lucy, within the Smart Space project, decided to take the initiative to create this white paper to help cities deal with these questions. We had a very nice team working on this white paper. First of all, there was the white paper working group, with actually experts from different cities and organizations, all having their own experience in bringing in their insights and vision on smart lighting into the project, supported by Lucy, Nikita, and Mark, of course. And we created a very nice international panel of experts from all different kinds of backgrounds, design, technology, philosophy, research, policy, that all shared their insights for this white paper. This is a visualization of the process. Briefly, it started with desk research, so case studies, literature, also using the wonderful Lucy Hub, which is a wonderful resource. Then I did a round of expert interviews in which we could really dive deeply into the topic and make use of all this expertise and experience from these international experts. And from that pre-research, I created a first collection of topics and sources that were the beginning of 2 co-creation sessions that we did with the working group. And in these 2 co-creation sessions, we actually added to the topics and prioritized them and seeing, okay, which are the most relevant and helpful topics to put into the white paper. Well, this I turned into a first draft, which was then reviewed by the experts in the working group. And a second draft I made was then sent to all Lucy members and associated members for review. We've got some useful comments from that, and actually that together resulted in the final white paper that I'm presenting today. Now, let's go into smart lighting. So what are we talking about when we talk about smart lighting? And actually, that depends on who you're talking to, because there are 2 different kinds of discourses about smart lighting. On the one hand, there's a technical operational discourse. So that's more about the technologies and the processes under the hood. So with very quantifiable goals, such as energy savings and reduced operational costs. And on the other hand, there's often a social, societal discourse. And this is about the effects on people in the city. Very qualitative terms are used, like atmosphere, values, feeling of safety, that kind of thing. And often we notice these 2 kinds of discourses are disconnected. And we feel it's very important that they are intertwined when we treat smart lighting, because they are both very relevant sides of this coin. Now, with these 2 perspectives in mind, we go into the first question, and that is why? Why should a city venture into smart lighting? Now, the answer to this question will be different for each city, because each city is different and has different circumstances, goals. But what we did in the paper is we highlighted, let's say, ingredients or different possible motivations that can help cities answer this question for themselves. And I listed these ingredients on this slide, and I will treat a few in this presentation. First of all, environmental sustainability. It can be a very important driver to venture into smart lighting. And in the white paper, we treat a case, the Diademi case from Italy. What they did there is they compared the pre-regulated dimming schemes based on time with adaptive dimming schemes that respond to traffic conditions and weather conditions in the light levels. And after a year of measuring these two settings, they found that actually the adaptive component can result in 41% energy savings compared to the pre-regulated dimming. So this is a really significant savings potential that can be met with adaptive dimming. And this is just one example. There are more, of course. But it indicates how valuable it can be for sustainability goals. Now, on the human side, of course, there are also benefits, and well, of course, in the smart space documentation, the value of smart lighting by Rianne Valkenburg and Elken and Oude. There's a myriad of good examples and concepts that treat these benefits for people, like the example here on the left, that you know. And we also cite some other examples like the adaptive tunnel lighting here in the greater Copenhagen region that automatically adapts the light level to outdoor conditions and also brings in atmospheric light that makes the tunnel more pleasant to use. And there are many more examples of that. But it also goes deeper than that even. On a fundamental level, smart lighting is actually politics in technological form, and I'll explain that. So public lighting has a great influence on the way that people use public space at night, of course. It's something that we tend to forget. It always has. Now we add sensing technology, data gathering, light behaviors. And again, this will have an influence on how people will use public space. And it can be a big impact because these are technologies gathering data in public space that people cannot avoid. Now, how this is applied in public space should be, let's say, a political democratic issue, with cities in the lead. And I let Professor Pieter Paul Verbeek, who is a Dutch professor of ethics and technology, explain a bit more about this political dimension of smart lighting.
It is quite reasonable now that we see that technologies can have such a profound influence. Of course, we should not do this for every ironing machine. But if we speak about public space, then we speak about our democracy. It's maybe the biggest value we have not discussed yet. But I think democracy in many countries, it's still a very important value. And I think the whole way in which we are speaking about this now is a way to foster that. And ultimately, the whole idea of citizen ethics as a way to understand guidance ethics and co-design, learning process. These are all elements of a democratization of technology development and implementation and use. So for me, this is also, I mean, these are elements of what a democracy can be in the 21st century. You need to extend it to the realm of technology. And the idea that a democracy basically means that you go out for a vote every now and then and you delegate the power to a small team of people. I mean, it's a totally outdated idea of where democracy is being done in our society.
Yeah, so it's also a call for cities to take the lead in deciding how this technology is applied in public space, as opposed to letting, for example, technological companies determine this. From smart lighting, it's often a small step towards adjacent functionalities like smart city functionalities, which are often called. Because these smart city applications, they often start with a smart lighting infrastructure. That is, everywhere where people are in public space. Once you have the data and the power infrastructure in place, then it becomes relatively easy to realize new applications on top of that. And this could also be a motivation to go into smart lighting with the idea to go further in future. Of course, taking into account all these ethical issues that we also highlight in the paper. Importantly, we also treat the question why not smart lighting, because it should not be treated as a goal in itself. It can be a means to achieve sustainability, social sustainability, better processes. But of course, like any technologies, it has downsides as well as upsides. And it's the balance between the two that, in our view, strongly depends on how it is applied and governed. And we list also a few of these considerations to take that are important, because maybe if you don't have your data management or security in order, or citizens are not involved, it can really backfire. And we also show examples of that in the white paper. But once a city made the decision to go into smart lighting, of course, the question how to comes knocking on the door. And again, we also list, let's say, helpful cases, experiences, insights from the network, from literature, from practice in the white paper to help cities answer this question, how to. And one of the things that came up often is the need to make a case, because at one point decision makers will require also a financial case, and what often happens is a payback period case. And we cite a few of these cases, for example, from Italy and Belgium, where the payback period case, so the time it takes to earn back the investment through savings, varies from 2 to 3 to 6 to 8 years. And this will depend, of course, on the city, on the circumstances, energy costs, but these cases can be made, and examples could help other cities with their case. Now, another thing that is, people with experience here want to give to other people is smart ways to do your investments in a future-proof way. And we treat a lot of some different examples. For example, Budapest, who is at the start of their LEDification process, actually is thinking ahead towards smart lighting already, because they use NEMA-ready luminaires. So luminaires that are ready to be outfitted with a NEMA socket that allows smart functionality. Now, the rest of the infrastructure is not ready for that yet, but once it is, they can just install the NEMA sockets on the luminaires they have without opening them up or voiding warranty. So that's the way that they are now smartly investing already for the future. In Helsinki, when they open the ground, they lay already protective tubing and microchannel piping, because they foresee that they will have a strong need for fiber optic capacity in the future, for example, for 5G and these kinds of things. So they're already in what they're doing now, they're thinking ahead. In Eindhoven, they already have a smart lighting infrastructure in parts of the city, and they are now showing how how they can build new applications on top of that existing infrastructure with relatively less investment, because they now, for example, have built a traffic insights system on top of their smart lighting system. Another key issue is interoperability. And this is really a key issue in smart lighting. Briefly put, it is the possibility to replace any system component of one supplier with an equivalent system component of another supplier in a plug-and-play way, roughly put. Now, there are suppliers that offer very nice, complete, functional systems, but still cities are hesitant to step in, sometimes because of fear of vendor lock-in or the fear of future availability of components. Now, there are solutions to this. There are open and royalty-free standards that allow different components from different suppliers to talk to each other, like Talk and Usify are emerging. But these open standards are not automatically adopted by vendors. And this is understandable from an individual vendor's perspective. But it creates this barrier to step in because of the fear of, well, the lock-in, for example. Now, cities have the power to create a breakthrough here in the widespread adoption of open standard and interoperable systems, simply by jointly demanding them in tenders. And this is starting to happen already. Once enough cities are asking for it, that this is an incentive also for companies to invest in it, and it may benefit all because it might enlarge the total market for these kinds of systems, because it will take down the barrier, the fear of lock-in from cities. And Lucy also has some example texts available for what to ask in the tender for this. All right, so and the last example how-to is about how to incorporate social elements. So, for example, engaging citizens in tenders. Now, we have cited a very nice example from Albertslund, where they created a panel of 42 residents that thought along with the renewal of their urban lighting. And this turned into criteria for the tender, and also a framework that allowed citizens to have a say in the development and the implementation of these projects. So they formally embedded citizen engagement in the tendering process. And this is also an inspiring example of how to do that, maybe for other cities. All right, so of course, a white paper cannot treat all these topics. We try to pick the most relevant ones from the city's perspective. And we can only briefly touch upon them, of course, but for people who want to dive deeper, there's a helpful resources section and an extensive reference list. Now, let me close off first by thanking everybody who contributed to the paper, the Lucy members, the experts, the working group, the Smart Space project, and the festive news that the paper will be released today. And Marc Berton-Page will talk a bit more about this in his presentation. And I sincerely hope that this paper will be of great help to cities around the world asking or answering the questions how and why between smart lighting. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Philip, for this concise and very clear introduction to the white paper. A great teaser for what's actually in there, and for people to actually wait for Mark's presentation later on so that they can actually access this paper. From this perspective of being involved or being generated through an Interact project, I like the notion that you actually brought in expertise from far further afield than only from the area, let's say, covered by the Smart Space project. I saw Helsinki, I heard about Budapest, Italy, maybe even further afield. Can you tell us a little bit about this interplay between being in this Interact project focused on Northwest Europe and a few very specific cities, mainly small and even small or medium-sized cities, and this bigger scope that you took? How did this play out, and how did it benefit the actual white paper?
Yes, well, actually, I had a lot of help from resources here from within the Smart Space project. So technical notes, cases also that were mentioned, and of course the network of people. So that was very helpful. When we, at the same time, we noticed that there are the Lucy network is of course very broad, and it reaches through 5 continents, if I'm right. And we also wanted to get insights from all these different parts of the world in. So we had an expert from South Korea, for example, an expert from North America. And we found it very enriching also to get these insights in, because these kinds of developments are very global, but they have a very local, let's say, repercussions or character or needs. Well, we thought it was a good opportunity to also learn from what's happening in these other parts of the world. So that's why we stretched that a bit.
Actually, maximizing the richness of the resource to make sure that this white paper is valuable for as many in the audience as possible. A great approach. We'll hear a bit more about that in a second. Philip, there are questions in the Q&A. I'm not going to ask them to you yet, because first I would like to hear from two other speakers before we come back to a closing Q&A session on this first block of the program. So thanks for the moment, stay with us, and we'll see you in a few minutes to go into the Q&A. So thanks very much. Moving on to the next part of the program, we have seen all these possibilities and these examples, but we've also heard that there are quite a few practical steps to make this work in practice in cities. And we have two expert speakers lined up to tell you more about how you can actually make that happen. But before we do that, we have prepared another little poll to find out where you, the audience, stand on the spectrum of readiness or experience with smart lighting. So we'd like to quickly hear from you. Do you have any experience with smart lighting? Not at all. Some experience, or we are actually very experienced. If you could indicate that, again, this would be a nice bit of background information for our speakers to fine-tune their addresses. So what is your level of experience with smart lighting in practice in your city or in your company or environment? Let's see how well advanced our audience already is. In the meantime, while you're clicking your answers, a reminder that the Q&A function is always open. I see that the first questions are coming in. Keep sending them, keep submitting them so that we can answer as many of them live in the webinar after the next keynote. And also a reminder for those of you who are interacting on the chat to maybe verify that you send your chats to the whole audience. We noticed that some of the comments are coming in addressed only to the host and the panelists, which is for us fine, of course, but then you miss out the interaction with the rest of the audience. So please take note of that. So let's see what the experience levels are. We see that there's a bit of everything, but that the largest block, the largest group in the audience is, let's say, medium experience level. There is some experience, but still a lot to learn. And I think this is an excellent fertile soil for our next two speakers to plant their seeds in. I would like to introduce Rianne Valkenburg and Elke den Ouden. They are the two founders of TUE Lighthouse. And this is an agency that has the mission to help organizations navigate and actually apply the knowledge that is developed in the Eindhoven University of Technology. And especially smart cities, smart urban lighting are some of their favorite topics. I see them nodding already. Can't wait to get started. So in this keynote, you get two speakers for the price of one to address you about how you could get operational and practical in your city about smart lighting. I leave the floor to you, Rianne and Elke. Tell us more.
Yeah, Rianne will share her screen. And then I'll get control, so then I can start talking. Yeah, so welcome to this part. I saw some familiar names in the list of attendees, but also some new ones. So that's very good. We don't know yet everybody in this field. That's also nice to know. We will present the work that we did in the Smart Space project. And now I don't see the button to move to the next slide. What happened? It's mute. It worked this morning. Ah, yeah. You did this, Rihanna, or? No, okay, then it takes time, apparently. So we talk indeed about making smart urban lighting work in cities. With two important questions. What is the value of smart lighting, really? And how can we make a roadmap to make this work in the city context? So we start basically a little bit from the same perspective as that Philips has presented. Of course, it's a technical thing, smart lighting, but the aim is to do this for the well-being of the people in the city. One of the drivers that we used for this project is this picture that was made by Light in Europe, where you see that in making things more sustainable, you first start with energy efficiency by LEDification, but then you can add intelligence to make it even more sustainable, like the adaptive lighting that Philip also presented. But ultimately, we do this for people, to increase the quality of life. So we look for light for well-being. And that means that what was also presented in the initial movie, we focus on smart lighting to add value to users of public space by providing the right light at the right moment, in the right place, and with the right atmosphere. And we also want to enable people to use and enjoy the public space and realize a higher level of well-being, and all this in an energy efficient way. To be able to do that, we have made this picture that you see on the left. Sometimes it's slow. And basically the elements that you see in this smart public lighting system is an infrastructure that is on the floor or in the ground even, but it's also the wireless infrastructure that you need to do things. Of course, we have lighting, which includes the traditional light poles, but also other lighting in public space, the controls, both sensors and software controls, and data management. And we will explain this further in this talk. And we want to do this human-centric. So are we going to talk about users, or are we going to really engage them? And we don't want to do the thing that's in the Dilbert cartoon, that we do all kinds of interviews, but then throw it away and think that we know better as a kind of a user ourselves what the system should be. So we want to involve them in three elements: in identifying needs, in co-creating use cases, and in user experience research when we implement things. And in the Smart Space project, we did this as well. So we went to all the pilot areas, talked to people in that area, the stakeholders, both citizens, residents, but also local shop owners or other people, schools or whatever there was in the area, and we talked with them about what are the pleasant places and what are the unpleasant places in this area. And we really want to understand why this is. And of course, we can talk about that in general during the 24/7, but we also, of course, focused on, and how is that in the evening when it's dark. And in this way, we get deep dialogues where citizens are seen as an expert of their environment, and we collect their views and get deep understanding of what's happening in a certain place. So from there we see needs, but also opportunities. What can we improve in that area? So these were described, and what, of course, you can wonder, like, what is this result of such sessions? Because needs of citizens are quite generic. It's not that we find new things. The pyramid of Maslow is still very valid also in these pilots. But by talking to them, we can make it very specific. It's linked to the location and it's linked to the situations. So we have very rich stories that give us a lot of information on how can we use light to improve the area. So after having investigated the needs, we have a series of use cases, workshops where we co-create with people from that area again, a municipality, for the municipality, of course, but also the stakeholders, the residents or the shop owners. And we create a storyboard of interactive use of smart lighting. So you see here the picture of St. Niklaas, where we were discussing this area around the church that is also an entertainment area. So in the use cases, we discussed like what's happening there around the clock, what kind of activities are happening and what could lighting mean for those activities. And then we did this in all the pilot areas. So this is the example of Liberty Square in Tipperary, where we also have a timeline to indicate the activities that happen, but there are also seasonal things like Christmas experiences or specific events. So you have like the daily rhythm, but also the yearly rhythm of activities that give inspiration to do something with smart lighting. So we describe them and visualize them. This is the example of Middelburg, which is a different story, with an area where you actually want people to go off the main roads and experience nice shops along, say, that are not in the direct shopping street, but more remote. Remote's not the wrong word, but off track. And that's how can you trigger people to go places that they normally don't go. And when we have these use cases, we went into describing them. So of course the use case itself, like what is it? But then we also discovered that we have to describe the requirements to the system, and that contains the information related to the lighting itself. But what is also very important is the smartness of the system. How do we describe that? So in this project, we actually had to develop a way to describe dynamic scenes that change over time. So we had to describe how are scenes activated? What is the trigger that activates them? Is there any dynamics within the scene? And what is this dynamic? And how is it then also activated? And how is it deactivated? So when should it stop? Should it go on forever or for a time or until another trigger has been triggered? And we have to discuss the data collection that we need to make the system work. And of course, the more sophisticated the use case, the more difficult this description becomes. So we also analyzed all the 8 use cases that we made for the cities in the Smart Space project. And then we basically found out we have 33 desired scenarios that are the basis for the smart lighting system in those places. And if you look through them, then there are basically 3 clusters of anticipated use and 5 different levels of interaction. So the 3 clusters are improving safety for all road users, enhancing leisure experiences, and increasing security for nightlife. And basically these things kind of return. So we have multiple use cases for each of those scenarios. And then we also found that we have different levels of interaction and smartness, you could say. So the first level, the most basic one, is static. You can design a very nice scene to enhance the shopping experience, for example, creating a nice warm atmosphere to attract people, more people in the afternoon, and to emphasize the lighting of the shops and the facades. So you basically design a nice scenario that you switch on and switch off, and that's it. So you don't need any communication or other things. The second is active lighting. So then we start to change things. There are multiple scenes. This picture was given by Philip already. It indicates that you can have brighter scenes in the beginning of the evening and more dimmed in the afternoon. And you control that via a clock timer in the software. So also not too smart. Things become smarter when you really have to react to things happening in the street. An example here is in Oostende, I think this shop is, this street is, where you really want to detect loading and unloading trucks during commuting hours when people are traveling to the train station, and they cycle there, and there's pedestrians and cyclists and parked vans. So you want to just light up that area shortly. Interactive becomes even more challenging, because then you also want to create localized effect, like kids playing with lights, in this case in Oostende near the beach where the sun is setting. You want to have people playing around, being outside and meet each other, and then you want to have such interactive parts, and that requires much more design of scenes, but also more technology. Oh, what's happening? Is this to say that time's up? We had one more, but one that is not yet very, it's not used in this project. Intelligence level, where you actually want to have machine learning involved in the scenes, where the system actually detects patterns of use and adjusts the lighting to that. We will not go in depth there. So you can actually build up those interaction levels. And then the discussion is, what does that mean for this smart lighting system? So to make that more tangible, we made a framework where we have these elements of the system, the components, lighting, controls, data management, and the infrastructure. And we indicated on the different interaction level what kind of requirements you actually have if you want to do static or reactive or interactive. So you can then see how you should build your system, what type of requirements you need to make it. And this is where I hand over to Rihanna.
Yeah. Not working yet. Yes, it is. Philip also addressed it. There are two ways to look at smart lighting. There's this societal social discourse. That's exactly where we also started. That's the work that Elke just presented. But of course, you need to make a transfer also to the technical operational part. Now that we know what we want, what the demands are, and what specifications are, you also want to know what are the solutions that are available, or new solutions that will be available in the future, that can help us to realize these applications that we found. So that's why we designed also a roadmap to make it really work in the cities. And the aim is to enable, in the end, the use cases, but to know what choices you make in technological opportunities. So it provides an overview of solutions in all these different elements, and in that way it can support decision making for procurement. So once you know what you want, you can also indicate what kind of technologies are available and that you would like to procure. So don't be scared by this one. We don't expect you to read all this, but I just want to explain the overview of the technology roadmap. We did a lot of interviews, especially with experts in the market, technology providers. What you can see in the top layer are the applications. The interaction levels of that Elke has just presented are representing the applications that we want to realize. And you can also see the technology layers that were also introduced that together find a system. But it's also important to look at the total system. How does it operate together? So in the technical solutions, the roadmap indicates what are these components, what is already in the market and what will be developed soon to support the scenario that you want to realize in a city on the different elements of the lighting system. So for lighting controls, data management, infrastructure, we identified what's already there. How do you use this roadmap? Well, for instance, let's say you choose this scenario, creating fun in a lively area that evokes people. As you may remember, this was an interactive scenario, so we need some extra technology to make it interactive, to make it react to people. So what do you need then for your lighting system? You need lighting elements that support these dynamic scenes with that localized effect. So you need to have luminaires that can enable that. Yeah, now it doesn't go to the next. Yes. You also need controls because you need to know how to react to people and what interaction you need. And we said in the interaction level that should be real time and fast, because if children are playing with the stepping stones, for instance, they cannot stand very long on one leg. So you need to be reactive immediately. These different sensors are going to create data. So you need a monitoring system and you need it to react to the right interaction at that time. And for that, your infrastructure has to be bidirectional high speed because you need it to react instantly. So that's how you can use these layers in the roadmap. And an important part of the roadmap is also the system level, because we noted that all these different technology components in the end need to work together. So it needs to be an integrated, interoperable system that is really designed for these use cases. So what do we mean with that? Integration is about all the hardware and software components that need to work together. They can be of different vendors and they can be using different technologies, but in the end, they need to comply to the standard and to the working of the system. Sometimes it's very slow. Yeah, and then it's too quick. The interoperability are also choices to be made. Do you make an isolated system, for instance, for a pilot area, or do you want these systems to be connected or even integrated into one universal system where you have a system for your entire town? That can also be very different for different situations and for the different way how cities or how you will encounter this smart lighting. And we found out that the design of an end-to-end system is very important. Philip also addressed it. This type of lighting needs different ways of designing the lighting system and designing these elements. So you need to think about what's the impact that we want to have and what's the user interaction and how can we make that interaction and the quality of the lighting scenes really aesthetically good so that people will really feel that their environment has improved. So that builds up to the entire roadmap. How is it used in a project? Well, we think that starting of a lighting project is mainly replacing luminaires that are already there. Most of these times it's replacing them with LEDs, or you have a new area to design. And then if you decide to use smart lighting, we think it's good in the preparation phase to think broad, as we also explained what we did with users, because you can now include also other ambitions that a city might have on, for instance, mobility, on health, on your urban space. So look broad on what you want as a city and try to implement that also in the lighting plans. Then in the definition phase, you look at the use cases that are there. What do you really want? And on what interaction level will you be playing with your use cases? So here you define what you really want, and then you can describe, helped by the roadmap, what the technical system must look like before you will procure. This is a very quick way to try to let you understand what it is, but we also made a movie that can really see how this works in practice.
The journey of implementing smart urban lighting often starts with an area where urban lighting needs to be replaced. The quick and easy way is to replace the luminaires with LEDs. However, once LEDs have been installed, the potential value of urban lighting can be increased. It can support your city ambitions, like healthy citizens or increasing active mobility, for instance with special lighting scenarios for jogging and cycling. To realize this, you need technical elements: infrastructure for power and data. Lighting includes all light sources in public space, controls to operate the system, and data management required to process data. All these components need to be integrated and work together as one. But how do you decide what needs to be implemented? The collection of tools in the Smart Space Toolbox will guide you. Here is an example. In this city, the project starts with a location. This is a mixed traffic road where pedestrians, cyclists, cars and heavy vehicles use the same space. The service we want to realize is to improve safety for all road users. For this service, several scenarios are available. Here we choose safe walking and cycling along the road. This scenario makes sure that cyclists and pedestrians are seen and feel seen. Local brighter areas are created around pedestrians and cyclists to increase their safety. Since the lights anticipate locally to real-time input, this is interactive lighting. This is the fourth level of interaction on a 5-level scale. Each level requires corresponding functionalities of the technical elements. This results in functional requirements for the system. The same interaction levels are used in the technology roadmap. The aim of the roadmap is to facilitate the selection of technology solutions available in the market to realize a smart lighting system for the end user's services. The main challenge is the integration of the different elements to achieve interoperability and an integral design. Therefore, the system layers are prominent in the technology roadmap. They are crucial to the success of smart lighting systems. The roadmap is a tool for defining the technical requirements for the smart system that can provide the desired lighting scenario. Before actually procuring the lighting system, one validation still needs to be done. Is the system future-proof? Suppose you choose a scenario at one of the lower levels. If new use can be expected in the coming decades, it may be wise to prepare the lighting system for a higher level. The chosen scenario remains the same, but the system is prepared for a higher level, for instance by reserving space for extra functions. All lighting scenarios, the technology roadmap and more tools are collected in the Smart Space Toolbox, ready to help you implement smart urban lighting in your city.
As we saw in the poll, 85% of you have already some experience at least with smart lighting, and more than half of that are experienced. So we don't need to convince you that the lighting system will become smarter. The only thing is that you would really need to understand what this means for your public spaces and what the opportunities are, because we think that we can really build a bright world with lively urban spaces and use the lighting in that to make people also appreciate their surroundings better, if you are able to integrate them and to let them participate in doing this. And the thing that we want to say is make your decisions future-proof, and we hope that the tools that we have can help you. So they are also available, but also for people that really want to start working with smart lighting. Don't hesitate to contact us if you want to understand more, because we also realize that there's a lot of information in a very short time. But we hope that it is helpful for you to understand what will be available there and how you can use it in your own practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rianne and Ed, for this very elaborate overview of your roadmap and what it can do for cities, including this finishing link where cities can find more written and typed information. But I also saw in the video that if they really are in need, you can jump into your branded van and actually the two of you drive up to their front doors and start helping them to install smart lighting. The human factor has been quite prominent in much of what you said, starting in the design and also in the ambitions that cities can bring. So this is really a component in addition to, let's say, environmental and cost-saving aspects that cities can benefit from, if I'm correct, in installing smart lighting. We had planned for a quick Q&A session, so let's see. And maybe I can also ask Philip to join us again, see if there are any questions in the Q&A left that we could answer collectively. I see that quite a few have been answered in writing, so everybody can, in the Q&A section, find the answers to the questions, including some links. One aspect that was raised, not in the Q&A, but actually in the chat, that was not visible for everybody, but that's a question that maybe is also interesting to quickly address. Now, this is a European project. We have all sorts of legislation in place for privacy protection, data protection. If you install these smart devices, is there anything that we need to be aware of in terms of legislation, either European or maybe local, before you can start using this type of material? Maybe I see all three of you nodding. So Elke, maybe you go first, and then Philip, you could reflect on it as well.
Yeah, certainly. As the interaction levels raise, we also see that more data is collected, and that's why this data management system is very important. But it also may include that you will have to make a data manifest in your city on how you're going about data collected in public space. So we see that there are examples, Philip also mentioned them in his publication, examples of data manifest, for example, that were made in Eindhoven and have been adopted by the Dutch Association of Municipalities. And it is important to explain what data you collect, and it's also important to think about, can we anonymize the data immediately so that it doesn't relate to people, for example. So if you have privacy by design solutions, then you can actually avoid collecting data. So for example, you can use cameras to count people, but you don't need to store the images. If you do the counting in the camera itself, in the software of the camera, then you immediately throw away all the images and you only keep the numbers. So solutions like that can actually help to meet those regulations or those rules or local policies. Some cities want to go further in privacy protection than others. So that's where you can actually work with.
Thanks, Philip. Anything to add to this?
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And there's a legal of course, there's a legal framework, the GDPR, that is, that's the basis that you need to comply with. But it goes even further than that, right? And it's a kind of a shift of mind to when you talk about lighting, that you have to think about data and data management, and why collecting which kind of data, and what do you use it for and what don't you use it for. And this is, I think, a very important shift that we all need to make when we talk about smart lighting, especially when you collect data from public space.
And let's not only try to think in restrictions. Of course, we have a law now, but we know that there will be more smartness in public space and in our lives anyway. So let's also see how we maybe need to change regulations in future to be able to use the full potential of these type of systems.
Right. So it's not just also following, but also leading into new thinking.
I think so. We're in this transition, so we need to change. Yep.
Yeah, that's a clear message. I am going to pick one more question. I see that many of the others can be addressed in writing. Maybe this is a question to Rianne. How do you get information from citizens that goes beyond the point that they simply say, no, I don't want this? So you might meet, and we are going to hear from practice as well from some of the citizens. So there's definitely more in store there. But what are clever ways to go beyond this initial hesitation that you might encounter?
This is a very important point. We see that in a lot of municipalities. It's what Elke also showed. It's the way you connect to people and also the timing where you connect them. So we use that cool wall method for that. We go to people. Most of the times people or municipalities are used to inviting people to a city hall and then hope that they will come up and say something. We learned that you really need to go there. So also in this project, we were standing on a market square during market time, and we went to places where people are and try to start talking to them, not in difficult technical ways, but just talk about them, about their environment. What do you, as Elke also said, what do you like? What don't you like? And then people are also not used to it, to giving advice in this early stage of innovation. So some might reply saying like, what are the 3 options and which one can I choose? But we try to explain over and over again that we want to include them in this design phase because we need it to be for their environment. All the people from the municipality go home at night and they sleep in their own bed, but we're doing it in a street where people live. They are there 24 hours. So we want it to fit to their needs. So it's a different way of working, and it's still very new, both to municipalities and to people. I think Philip also showed how he is doing that in an interactive way with real people in the street. So that's, we are still trying to do that and trying to do it more and more. So people also get used to being asked in an early stage.
Thanks, Rianne. So this is the fine art of public participation, also applied to smart lighting. I think
maybe I can.
We have to leave it here. Also looking at the progress of our plans and programs for today. But don't go away before we quickly show you what's been going on behind the scenes. The work of our artist in residence, Nienke, has been drawing away, listening to your talks. So maybe we can have a look at what she makes of all the things that you've explained. This is quite a lot of information. Is there anything that immediately strikes you here, apart from the fact that she has been very busy writing it all up or drawing it all up? What in any case will happen is that there will be more of those drawings today, and we will compile them into a poster together with Nienke. And this will be available after the session for everybody to zoom into.
Nice work, well done.
Nice work.
Yeah, nice.
Definitely. Yes. Okay, let's wrap up this block of the program here today. Thanking Philip, Elke, and Rianne very much for your contributions. Thanking the audience for the moment for being so interactive. Those questions that are on the Q&A that we haven't addressed yet, we will come back to either in writing today or after the conference. So maybe Philip, Elke, and Rianne, you can have a look what you could still do for those questions. And we will move on to the following block of our program. which is dedicated to showcasing the pilot projects of the Smart Space project. There were 4 of those on different locations in Northwest Europe. We will soon invite some speakers on the screen, but first let's have a quick look at a video that was made of these pilot projects to give you an impression of what's been going on.
Met het project Smart Space willen 12 partners uit Noordwest-Europa nagaan in welke mate openbare verlichting kan bijdragen tot het verlagen van de CO2-uitstoot. Maar liefst 30% van het energieverbruik van steden of gemeenten gaat naar openbare verlichting. Samen met kennisinstellingen en bedrijven wordt dit nu getest in 4 pilootsteden: Middelburg in Nederland, Tipperary in Ierland, Sint-Niklaas en Oostende in België. In elke stad is op 1 of meerdere plaatsen intelligente lidverlichting geplaatst.
Wij nemen deel met 2 zones binnen de stad. Enerzijds de stationsomgeving en anderzijds de omgeving van de Victorialaan, waarbij we de verlichting nader onderzoeken en nagaan in hoeverre we de verlichting voor een stuk intelligenter kunnen maken, waardoor ze bijvoorbeeld 's nachts minder licht geeft, waardoor er minder verbruik is.
We willen op een residential area willen we smart verlichting doen in het historische binnenstad. En eigenlijk een beetje in een gebiedsontsluitingsweg aan de kant van de stad. En dan willen we kijken of er mogelijkheden zijn om toch cellengebruiks daar te hanteren. Maar wel met lagere energieniveaus, zodat we CO2 kunnen besparen.
Door het gebruik van sensoren en via slimme communicatietechnologieën krijgen we de juiste hoeveelheid licht op het juiste moment op de juiste plaats. Doelgericht gebruik maken van het licht op een manier dat de leefbaarheid en openbare veiligheid niet in het gedrang komen.
Wij willen eigenlijk de stadskern beter verlichten. In de stadskern komen veel functies samen. Je hebt veel mobiliteit daar, busvervoer, fietsvervoer. Je hebt er ook een uitgaansbuurt. Dus het Smart Space project is erop gericht eigenlijk om verlichting aan te passen naar gelang de noden.
At the moment we have about 16,000 street lights in Tipperary. About 2,000 of those lights are LED. The rest are very inefficient. Dealing with other municipalities throughout Europe, we can see how other councils and other cities manage the changeover from the old bulbs to LEDs.
Gluren bij de buren dus, samenwerken, leren van elkaar en die ervaringen delen met andere steden uit Noordwest-Europa, omdat ook zij met slimme openbare verlichting aan het werk kunnen om de CO2-uitstoot te beperken.
So there you have it, quite a diversity of real field actions going on in installing smart lighting. I would like to invite a few stars of this video on screen to tell us a little bit more of what their experiences have been and what happened after they made the video and when they actually started realizing their investments, their pilots. Sarah van den Bossen, who's a policy advisor at the municipality of Sint-Niklaas. And then I would also like to invite Michel Jose, who's in charge of the pilot in the city of Middelburg, and Michael Tierney of Tipperary County Council in Ireland. Sarah van den Bossen, let's go first into the experiences in your pilot in Sint-Niklaas. So this was an activity that took place in the heart of your city, a busy place, lots of people, lots of mobility and traffic, nightlife even. What has been your experience in rolling in smart lighting into this particular area?
Yes, thank you, Taco, and good morning to you all. So for the implementation of smart lighting in our city, we went through 3 big steps, you can say. So first of all, under the guidance of the Technical University of Eindhoven with Rianne and Elke, we, like they said, already tried to gain insight in the specific needs of various stakeholders concerning public lighting, stakeholders that live there or work there. So we brought them together, inhabitants, shop owners, to have a conversation on how it is like to be in, for example, the Stationsstraat after dark? What are the nice spots, the less nicer spots? How is the atmosphere there? What kind of lighting is needed there to improve the atmosphere or the safety? So in Sint-Niklaas, we had two different areas. So on the one hand, you have the Stationsstraat, which is a shopping street, our main shopping street. And then you have the Sint-Nikolaasplein, which is a nightlife area. So obviously the needs in these two different kind of areas are different. And then as a second step, after we identified those needs, we had to translate them into different light scenarios, also together with TUI, because they have, of course, the expertise to do that, and also together with the other stakeholders, like, again, inhabitants, shop owners, barkeepers as well, the police also. We sat together and worked out a storyboard with different scenarios that reflect the needs of those different target groups, also related by timing over day and night, because the needs change, of course, during the day. But in general, the aim is, of course, to dim the lights as much as possible, but still create a safe surrounding and a nice atmosphere. And then the third big step is translating those light scenarios, those use cases, into a technical light plan with our technical partners that were in this partnership, Intemo and Fluvius. Fluvius is an important partner in Flanders because they are the grid operator and they own and maintain our public lighting. So with them, we try to install really the smart ready lighting that can be steered, of course. So those were the three big steps we went through. Then maybe I can give some lessons that we learned, some recommendations for other municipalities, and that is to get experts around the table. In this partnership, of course, a lot of experts were involved, so they can help you by defining what is a smart lighting system, how does it work, what can sensors do, how do you manage it, and so on. So with them, you can make an integrated planning on what you have to do. And also tackle privacy issues is also important. That was also mentioned before. So in general, you can say that smart lighting is not a solution that you can take off the shelf. It's really specific to the needs of stakeholders and a specific area you want to have smart lighting in. So that's in a nutshell our experience.
Thanks very much. So there's one recurring word in much of your contribution. It's the word need. Anything that you design has to be demand driven. I can imagine Rianne and Elke driving up in their little van with the smart space logo on it, going into Sint-Niklaas and finding out what the needs are in these different areas. Could you reveal a little bit about specifically what kind of needs do you encounter when you scope out for a nightlife area, and how does it compare to the shopping street, for instance?
Well, in a nightlife area, there was a need for especially a nice and safe nightlife atmosphere. When you go out, it's important that you feel safe, that unwanted behavior is avoided, and that there can be surveillance when needed. So, for example, at the Sint-Nikolaasplein, we have sound sensors. So when there is a lot of noise that can be a sign that there is a problem, maybe something else is going on, but maybe that's a trigger to brighten the lights at that moment. And then the police with cameras, there are cameras in that area, can see well, when the light is brightened, what's going on there. So with those sensors you can adapt according to sound, for example, and that can enhance the safety. But for example, in the shopping street, it's very important there that you have a nice and pleasant atmosphere, that it's nice to shop there. So it's also important that the light is warm and equal there. So we can work there with light sensors that adapts to the light that comes out of the shops, so that you have throughout the street an equal and warm light. So 2 examples of the different needs and how we try to cope with that.
And this should translate into the scenarios that you talked about for diverse lighting, let's say flexible programs that you can then introduce. Is that right?
Yes, so indeed. So when you want to enhance the safety, when that's an important issue, an important need, it's really about locating incidents, for example, and with those sound sensors you can do that. And in the Stationsstad you have that warm atmosphere that you want. So again, also there are sensors to help you with that.
And all of that is something that you are thinking about and planning for now, and that actually takes quite a bit of time to introduce. So you need to have this forward-looking approach, I can imagine, in trying to identify these scenarios way ahead before you implement them.
True, and that's why you also need the help of experts, because in a city mostly the expertise isn't present there. So it was really a good thing that you have knowledge institutes such as the Technical University to help you with that, because you really need that expertise around the table.
Excellent. So be aware of your own limitations, but don't hold back and simply get the experts in. We know their phone numbers, or at least what their van looks like. Thanks very much for the moment, Sarah. Don't go away, or not at least too far away. We'll come back to you maybe a little bit later after we've heard from the other pilot representatives. But now I would like to move to Michel Joseph from the city of Middelburg to tell us a little bit more about the pilot that they did there. Michel, could you make yourself seen? There you are, and there you're not. So Michel, explain.
Yes.
Ah, there you are.
Sorry.
In your video, you explained that you actually in Middelburg are looking at several different types of places. So again, this diversity, these typology, residential areas, the historic city center, and access roads, they have very different demands. How did you deal with that? What did your pilot look like in Middelburg?
Thank you.
Could you also start your video, or at least could somebody highlight Michel, because I can't see him?
I think this is better. Yes, thank you, Taco. Well, in Middelburg, it is a project. Middelburg is a pilot site, but we divided the pilot of Middelburg into different smaller pilots to make it more clear what the different needs and questions are for smart lighting. And in the historic city center, we found out that there was an ask and a need for good atmosphere. Of course, attention for traffic and social safety during in the morning and in the afternoon during rush hours, but also at night during pub closing time. And there was another idea of integrating all kind of lights that are there in the shopping street. So there is light from the shops. During winter time there is Christmas lighting for a good atmosphere, but there is also public lighting, and we try to integrate these types of light into each other. So that were pilots in Middelburg, and the main roads at the border of this city, going to the out land of our municipality. There is a main road with only car traffic, but there are a lot of cycle crossings. So we found out, as the need for the people who live there, they asked for less light because they wanted to, they found out it's a light pollution for these main roads, but they asked also attention for the safety of the bicycle crossings. So that's a few experience of our city.
the different needs. And did you manage to find different lighting settings or solutions for those different needs or challenges, or is this still in the process?
Well, if you got a different question, then you got a different solution. That's one thing that takes time during this process. It's a project, of course, and you have to finish it within 3 years, but it's also a process you go through with each other. And if you got different questions from different sides, then you got different solutions, and then you have to work it out to come to something. And so that takes time.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a journey where you learn as well as a city in a project like this. What kind of key lessons would you like to give to other cities that are following in your footsteps?
Well, key lessons for us are, I think, that at first, when you start with this, you have to find space to make compromises. Don't be afraid to start. Don't be afraid to think things over and try it. Because I find out that the policymakers, the colleagues, the experts, they're a little bit, how do you say it, backholded. And when you ask with the residents, they are, in most of the time, they are far ahead of us, because they see chances in their neighborhood, and they don't see obstacles in other things. So it makes it easier when you use them.
Great. So actually, quite a positive note on the residents. They're not going to say no all the time. They actually might be open to much more experimentation and change than you anticipate.
Yeah, I think so. If you it's just also in the way of how do you start this discussion. If you start with dimming the light and say you want to save energy and CO2 reduction, they all say well done. But if they think dimming light means less light and less sight, then you've got a discussion and you've got a barrier. But if you ask what their needs are and you give them more into the direction of quality of light and well-lighted places, then you've got a different discussion. And it's nice. I think Scylla's going to tell us more about this project, but in December we did some field survey, and when the installation was installed, then a lot of colleagues who were a little bit criticized, they had critics on this project. When they saw the lights on the street, then they were enthusiastic.
So they were convinced.
And yes, they were convinced, and inhabitants, the residents also. They say, okay, less light is not a problem.
So that's been quite a positive experience there. I would like to bring in the third pilot representative, which is Michael Tierney from Tipperary County in Ireland.
Good morning.
Good morning, Michael. So you came from an entirely different background in the sense that the area that you've worked in wasn't a town, it was actually a county.
It's a county. Tipperary is a rural county in the Republic of Ireland, and it's an area of about 4,300 square kilometers and has a population of 159,000 people. So if you're looking on sort of the average number of people in each square kilometer, we only have about 37 people in each square kilometer of the county. So as said, we have no cities. We have a few large towns and over 100 villages. So our population base is spread out. Now, we've been working for several years on reducing our carbon footprint, and we have signed up with the Covenant of Mayors on this to reach certain targets. And luckily enough, now in 2020, we had set a target of reduction in our carbon footprint of 33%, which we met. We're now working on the next target for 2030, which is a 50% reduction. And we're more than 43% there at the moment. So there's a lot of focus on upgrading our street lighting network throughout Tipperary to bring that figure even closer to the 50% mark. like street lighting within Tipperary is more than 50% of our power requirement each year and costs us about €1 million just to pay the power bill to keep the street lights running. That's not including maintenance. So there's a lot of work going into this. 1/3 of our street lighting is done, upgraded over the last couple of years, but only recently we've started upgrading with using Generation 2 Smart Ready street lighting. So within this project, we've upgraded about 600 lights within Tipperary, and these are working off a management platform. So it's really is a pilot for not only for Tipperary, but for the local authorities around us, because while some other local authorities might have trialed smart lighting, they might have only done 30 lights or 40 lights. Tipperary has 600. Most of these are in the town of Thurles. It's a town in the centre of the county, has a population of about 8,000 people. And in certain areas, these lights now are up there on the management platform, we can see them. But in certain areas now, we're also going to expand this by trialing interactive and reactive lighting, where we can dim the lights if there's little or no movement and bring the lighting back up if people are back operating or moving around the area. On Liberty Square, we're also going to trial RGBW lighting, which is in the pedestrian areas. We can change the colour of the lights for festivals, for match days, for Christmas, Halloween, things like that. We're also going to be working on better safety around our pedestrian crossings, whereas if a person comes to a pedestrian crossing and hits the button, the white lighting above the pedestrian crossing will elevate up, light the area up better, and give any motorist approaching the area better indication and better visibility of the pedestrian. And then there's other fun things that we're including is in gobo projector lighting. So they're, again, for festivals and for events, that these things will project images out onto, say, buildings and things like that. Now, we've also moved away from the large urban centre and looked at 2 rural villages about 30 kilometres away from Thurles, Drangan and Clonalty, and we've upgraded all the lighting in these 2 villages as well to smart lighting managed on the platform. And in these villages now, what we'll probably be thinking of, because the population density is lower, the chances of movement is lower. Like, how many areas would we have, like the car park to a school or the car park to a church, where there'd be no activity at night, but the street lighting is still lighting up that area. So again, looking at reactive, interactive lighting for these areas to see if we can bring the carbon footprint down further. And beyond that, we also have done a change in our sort of way of thinking on street lighting in the county, whereas before this, we always used to give a specification of up to 4,000 Kelvin in the colour of our lighting. And this was seen by the contractors that were doing the works for us more so as a target, not just the maximum level. So nearly all the lighting that would have been done 3-4 years ago would have been a 4,000 Kelvin light. Through our meetings with the universities and the other partners in this project, and actually through a similar process with a different project we were working on, we found that for biodiversity, it'd be better off to stay within a 3,000 Kelvin range. And so the smart lights that have gone up are in a 3,000 Kelvin range, and any other lighting that we're upgrading at the moment since the beginning of the year of last year was also 3,000 Kelvin, and it's working fine. We have no complaints yet. So we're also looking at anything like a special area of conservation where you have biodiversity concerns and that. So those we would actually drop down to a minimum down to about 2,700 Kelvin. And again, we also have 1 or 2 areas where people are interested in the Dark Skies Ireland project. Just as people that are living in villages would like us to stop the amount of light pollution or do what we can to mitigate it. So in those areas, then we'll be offering the choice as well as going as down to 2,700 Kelvin on the lighting. Like, from Tipperary's perspective, from my own perspective, I came into this project as a civil engineer, not a lighting engineer. And as I said, we're working with Tipperary Energy Agency, who are our energy conservation consultants. And between us, we had large gaps in the knowledge of how to actually design and implement a smart lighting system for the county. So if we hadn't taken part in this project, as Rianne said earlier on, we may have been able to buy stuff off the shelf, but it certainly wouldn't have been future-proofed. We wouldn't probably even know how to experience what half the technologies would have been available to us. So by taking part in the Interreg project, it really benefited Tipperary. And that's pretty much it for what I have to say.
Thanks very much, Michael. So that's a very clear statement, a very different setting in the rural context regarding the needs and requirements. You also touched upon a point that was raised in several of the questions in the Q&A, the aspect of biodiversity influence. You explained how you actually reduced color temperatures of some of the lighting in the rural areas. Did you consider additional measures in terms of angling or coloring of the lights, or has it been mainly related to the temperatures when this came into?
A lot of rural areas within Tipperary, we don't put lighting outside the 50-kilometre limits of, say, the villages or the towns. So in the past, people would have been looking for street lighting, even outside houses, things like that. But not anymore. We have to try and think of biodiversity and keep our carbon footprint down. The design, when we do go to the process of installing lights or upgrading lights, we get our consultants who are also the company that installs the lights, to do a quick design on each of them to see what is the best way, what is the angle of the lights, do we need brackets, do we need to change the height of them, what strength of the lights is this? But we're always sort of trying to get to the point where we're meeting the target lighting for an area without actually over lighting an area, without having it too bright or too many lights.
Okay, thanks very much, Michael. I would like to close off this session, this part of the program, by thanking the three of you very much. Before you go away, let's have a very quick look at what Nienke made of your contributions. Nienke, could you show us how you actually visualize these different experiences from Sydney Klaas, from Middelburg, and from Tipperary County? So clearly, all the different needs are there, the sensors for safety and data collection, the interaction, and the reduction of the carbon footprint. Any immediate reflections from the three speakers?
Well, I think Nienke did a wonderful job.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yes, it's very amazing.
Yeah, that's great.
Nice.
Thank you.
Okay, looking forward to the actual full-size print, Nienke. Thanks very much. So there we are, back again, and ready to move to the next block of our conference program, which is all dedicated to two very important elements that have popped up throughout the sessions this morning, that are important drivers of the transition to smart lighting, but also important factors to take into account when designing your smart lighting solutions. In a while, we'll hear a bit more about the impact of smart lighting on energy savings and emission reduction in cities. But first, let's zoom in on citizens. How can you reach them? How do users react to changes to smart lighting? And what are important elements for them? And here to talk about this is Sila Akman Ashik, who's an architect and a design engineer who recently obtained her engineering degree from the Smart Buildings and Cities program at the University of Eindhoven. And she investigated, in the context of smart space, the evaluation of user experiences with smart urban lighting. What can you tell us about this, Sila?
Thank you, Taco, for the introduction. Now I'm sharing my screen. Yeah. Hello, everybody. Thanks. I would like to thank all the other panelists. Even if I know the process of the project, it was really nice to see all of them together. And in this presentation, I will focus on the citizen's perspective, and I briefly tell you about the toolbox I designed within my PDN project. Then I tell you about the field experiments we conducted in Middelburg. First of all, I would like to frame the problem and design challenge and deliverable within our work package, the monitoring and evaluation work package, focusing on the citizens' perspective. The main problem we could detect was the lack of knowledge about acceptance of smart urban lighting and its effect on citizens. I thought of design a toolbox to assess small and medium-sized municipalities in user experience research with smart urban lighting. Within this aim, the deliverables were a project report, which is accessible on TUE archives, and I also gave link here, and an Excel-based tool, which is user experience toolbox, which will be shared in a Lucy Hub at the end of this project, and also some demo videos showing how to use this toolbox over the lighting scenes designed by Elke and Rianne. And you can also access this videos via the link on the chat. I won't go deep in the structure of the toolbox. I briefly tell you how it works. The toolbox consists of 4 main parts, namely guidelines, definitions, tools, and assessment parts. And considering how it works, the municipalities or user experience researchers provide an input, naming purpose of the assessment, interaction level, and goal of implementation. Then the toolbox facilitates or provides an output showing the matching methods and tools, and provides a checklist for the research plan. And it is the first phase which assists municipalities on decision making to pick the convenient methods and tools in user experience research. And the second phase is assessment part. In this phase, municipalities' inputs are the data collections and the entering this data into this Excel-based tool. And this tool provides a dashboard and scoring at the end, considering the structures defined there, the parameters, dimensions, and the subparameters. As I said, I would like to demonstrate the use of it via a case study we conducted in Middelburg. And we went over the toolbox with municipalities, and we also checked the usability of the tool within this. And I will show the Middelburg case to you. And in the first part, the guidelines, this toolbox asks for the purpose of the user experience evaluation and the interaction level of the implementation and the main goal of this smart lighting implementation. And in line with this input, it provides the matching results, like dimensions of this user experience research and the convenient methods for this research, and also relevant parameters. And then by knowing these dimensions, methods, and parameters, in the next step, it provides a tool set which could be used for the user experience research in this specific case. But this tool set has options, so municipalities need to make another decision to prioritize or choose which tools works better for their case. For this, they can decide checking the time, budgets, complexity, and effectiveness of each tool. In the Middelburg case, in line with their needs the tools were assigned as public opinion panel, acceptance survey, and vision test. And then by having known the tools, we also checked together the checklist for the research plan and we together draft a research question, and we also checked the scale of the survey, which was a site study there, and we had already know the right tools for the study, and we planned the survey all together, and we gathered the surveyors, and we also decided the dates, and we checked the weather beforehand, and we prepared survey materials, and we also prepared a checklist for the materials we will need in the field, and we organized the survey schedule and tasks, and we prepared the test protocol, and we invited the participants, especially actually municipality invited the participants, and we also calculated the duration of the experiments, and we decided on the location, and together with the municipality we executed the survey, and I would like to show you a preview for the field study we conducted in Middelburg, the city center.
En dan kan je de kleuren lezen.
This is a vision test we conducted. It was a part of the survey, and the survey also included general assessment and also demography part. And at the end of this field experiment, we also organized a public opinion panel, which I will mention in the next slides. And then we entered the data we collected in the field, and the dashboard at the end within this entered data and we collected data provides a dashboard for a specific case, considering the relevant parameters and the needs of the municipalities and the character of the lighting scenes. And I would like to elaborate the process procedure of the field experiment and survey. We conducted it on in December, and it was in the city center, and it was the route Hofans in Peter, and the weather was dry and warm, and we set two lighting scenes. The first one was with minimum horizontal luminous 3 lux and correlated color temperature to 2500, and the setting 2 was with minimum horizontal luminous 1 lux and correlated color temperature 2200 Kelvin. And at the end of this 2 lighting scenes, we gathered all together with the participants and with the surveyors, and there was a demo there showing the extremes of the dimming schemes, like 50% dimming, 90% dimming, and 0% dimming. And participants also voted their opinion or their feeling by using the colorful sticky dots. And for this study, as I mentioned, the tools used are T10 vision test boards and the questionnaires showing measuring safety and visual comfort and also acceptance. And at the end, to gather the public opinion and also show the participants the different lighting dimming levels. It was a public opinion panel. I believe that it helped a lot because seeing a kind of believing, because if I felt like the light wouldn't be enough and I would have some prejudice, so I would assess the scene with this prejudice, but we didn't tell them what we did with lighting. We just showed them a scene, and then we explained what happened, what was the dimming level and what was the illuminance. So yeah, I think it was very useful. And yeah, in general, 25 participants attended, in 2 days, 13 participants in day 1 and 12 participants in day 2. And I would like to briefly show you the results of this field study, and you can find the further info in the final report of the Smart Space project. And considering the distribution of the gender, age, and the using glasses or contact lens or not, is shown in this graphs. So I may say that it's the parts, the gender-wise and age-wise, it is the participants are distributed representatively. And considering the other parameters defining the profile of participants, 1/3 of the participants were not familiar with the site, which means the specific street, and their attitude were mostly positive against the concept of smart urban lighting, and some of them have natural attitude. And when I check the open answer they provide, the reason behind it that they didn't know the possibilities of smart lighting, or they didn't know if smart lighting may have any adverse impact. So considering the mood of the participants, I may say that all of them were happy, calm, and independent. So I may say that assessment of the participants are reliable. Yeah, considering the visual performance of the participants under these 2 lighting scenes, I can surprisingly in the low level lighting, the recognition of the letters were better than the first scene, which means participants performed better in lower level lighting. Maybe it's probably the distribution of light, or their probably the private light, the balance between private lighting and setting to match well. It's my interpretation. And considering the color recognition, I may say that there isn't much difference between apart from green and red. I will go depth in it in the report, and I will interpret it, but it's the primary results now. Considering their general assessments between setting 1 and setting 2, and in setting 2 they feel more comfortable, especially visually, and they feel less safe, I may say. But I believe that the safety issue is, I can say that there isn't, considering the minimum and maximum of the safety, it is not a big issue, and people mostly feel safe. And at the end, considering the comfort, satisfaction, and safety, their acceptance, if I check their acceptance of the 2 different lighting scenes, I may say that the second setting accepted better than the first one, and the participants found the first one less comfortable. And also, we showed them the extreme dimming levels by not dimming at all, and dimming 90% and dimming 50%. And again, we see that even if they find the, let's say, bright light safe, they didn't feel comfortable with this bright lighting, and they didn't find it acceptable. And considering the 90% dimming, most of them find it comfortable, but they have some doubts about safety, even if it is their satisfaction level was fair, they find it acceptable. But considering the balance scenario, they feel comfortable, safe, and they find it satisfactory, and they found it acceptable. And when we said them that the second scene was 90% dimming, most of the participants couldn't believe because it was not as bad as they thought. So what I can say is, seeing is believing. The assessment of this field study was mostly a trial and the test for the user experience toolbox. But the most important thing is bringing citizens to the city center and showing them and asking their opinion. So even myself being involved in this project, couldn't imagine how they would look like in general, but being on the site helps me and all the participants a lot. And yeah, I think I may say that it was very useful. So I will elaborate them at in the final reports. Thanks for your attention. It's end of my presentation, and if you have any question related to, or if you are interested in the theoretical framework of the toolbox, you can look at my report, which
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sheila, for this elaborate presentation. A very lively presentation of what this toolbox could bring to cities. Your main message also, bring people out into the field, is well understood. So thanks very much for this, and I encourage all participants to look into this final report and look for this toolbox further on. I would quickly like to move to the next speaker on our program, which is an expert in the energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions of smart lighting, Dr. Aytat Gören from the University of Izmir in Turkey, but also the University Picardie Jules Verne in France. He worked in the context of smart space on an investigation on the effect of smart lighting on energy use and greenhouse gases.
Thank you very much, Taco. It is very nice to be here, and it is very nice to work in this project. And now I want to share my screen about the energy consumption and have a brief look. I hope you can see my screen at the moment. So perfect. Now let me have a quick look for the presentation. My name is Aytaç, and today I'm going to present a brief analysis of energy consumption and annual greenhouse gas emission estimations in Smart Space project. I will start with conventional public lighting, continue with smart lighting and energy consumption differences with conventional lighting. Last but not least, I will present the estimations of annual energy consumption of public smart lighting and GHG emissions in 4 cities of smart space. So when we look at this slide, we can see that for the conventional lighting, street lighting accounts approximately 1/3 of electricity consumption of municipalities, but even most of the public lights in modern cities consist of old and inefficient ones. It is common to see that street lights are fully shining even there is no one in the street, or sometimes you only find your cell phone light when you need it. And in conventional public lights, there is no light nor presence sensors. So it doesn't sense the light level nor any object passing. It is common that these lights are activated with timers, which the time intervals are changed due to the seasons, but dark hours of a day changes each day in a year, and light levels changing with the angle of the sun rising. And before Smart Space project, the luminaires on the pilot locations of the 4 cities were using conventional lighting. In this table, you may see the number of the luminaires which were selected to be upgraded, total nominal power of these lights, and annual energy consumption of these lights in these 4 cities. So we can say that most of them are high pressure sodium and need to be changed. And when we come to the smart lighting, implementation of public smart lighting with different scenarios not only solves problems about making the light on at the needed time intervals, but also makes the lighting act as if there is someone with a light helping you. Besides, it's obvious that efficient lighting reduces energy consumption and carbon footprint. And if you look at this graph, the blue area here shows you the representation of the dimming profile, and the dark blue lines over there are the sensor triggers. And if we compare the dimming profile with conventional public lighting and also the smart public lighting, the areas in this graph is the energy consumptions of 3 different types of public lighting. The green region is the energy consumption of conventional public lighting with a timer. The region with light blue in color is the LED with light sensor use. The region with blue color is the dimming profile embedded public lighting with light and presence sensors. The power of conventional public lighting is approximately 5 times greater than LED ones. But I want to also mention that not all the lights are just inefficient ones in these cities. So it is not a constant thing. The difference in regions, so the energy consumption difference between these types can be easily seen in this graph. Upgrading to public smart lighting includes tests and also changing of hardware in field. However, this was not easy, like as many things in last 2 years we experienced, because changing luminaires and making them sending data was not a thing can be done with a distance. In these conditions, 863 luminaires have been upgraded to smart ones and have been made possible to send data with telecontrollers till the end of December 2021. During these conditions, to analyze the energy consumption, greenhouse gases emissions, an idea was arisen as to mathematical model the annual energy consumption of a city to estimate the annual energy consumption of the total changed luminaires. Here we see the data provided from 13 lights in Middelburg in September 2021. Energy consumption measurement and working hours can be also in data, but in order to construct a reliable mathematical model, the sample data should be reliable, synchronous, and the scale part which represent the whole city should be similar. Another important thing is that the number of installation was increasing during this time. For these reasons, only the reliable measurement data from telecontrollers during validation period have been used to form the energy consumption model. As an example, this graph represents 42 lights data in 136 lights in Middelburg during 2 weeks. Developed model during project consists of 3 parts. First part considers the changing dark hours through a year and the embedded dimming profile. Second part is the energy consumption in sunlight hours or in standby mode. The third part is the part which is related to the sensor triggers. For example, a walking pedestrian triggers the increase of light level or start a lighting scenario. Besides, the need of light out of night hours can be sensed by light sensors and triggers the turning off the lights and etc. The model has been validated with 2 weeks of energy consumption measurement of Middelburg, total daily energy consumption of 42 luminaires in Middelburg between the end of August 2021 and 12th of September 2021. Has been measured as 146 kilowatt hours, and the volume found using model was 151 kilowatt hours, which is very close. The model has 3.36% error. Using this model before October 2021, the annual energy consumption of smart lighting in Middleburg has been calculated as 46,849,024 watt hours. After that, with the increased number of installations, 136 light data in 105 days between 30th of July 2021 and 12th of November 2021 has been made. The result is 46,296,037 watt hours of annual energy consumption estimation for the complete installation of luminaires. Updated estimation is only 1% less, which supports the first estimation. In this graph, the annual energy consumption estimations for complete installations can be seen. This means the annual energy consumption estimation in year after the installation is completed. In these estimations for Middleburg, 105 days long data of 136 lights have been used. For St. Nicholas, it was 179 days long data of 115 lights, whereas for Tipperary, it was 62 days long data of 102 lights energy consumption measurement. For Ostend, no measurements could be provided, but this gave us a chance to use a generalized annual energy consumption model, which is implemented from Middleburg. As to analyze the annual greenhouse gas emission, we need to first analyze the GHG intensities of Belgium, Ireland, and Netherlands. Considering the change of GHG intensities in years, different GHG intensities have been calculated. The results have been used for annual greenhouse gas emissions of the cities in 1 year period of time after complete installations. The results of annual greenhouse gas emissions can be seen in this figure. And as you can easily see, it is very satisfactory. Gray bars represent the annual GHG emissions before the project, and green bars represent the estimations of emissions in the year after the project. In this table, the percentages of reductions in energy consumption and greenhouse gases emissions can be seen. With these results, it can be said that there is a very high possibility of reaching the goals in reductions of energy consumption and greenhouse gases emissions. As to conclude, this table represents the comparison of the total energy consumption GHG emissions before and after the project. And that was my presentation. Thank you for the participation to the meeting and the presentation.
Thank you very much, Aytaç, for actually putting some numbers to this assumption that there is a reduction in greenhouse gas and energy consumption to be had. So this always, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, let's say. One very quick question to you. After having looked at the graphs, I see that all cities demonstrate a reduction in emissions and in energy consumption, but one has a much bigger jump, let's say, than the other, Tipperary standing out. Is there a very short explanation that you can give us for this difference?
Yes, most of them, I think, noticed that very high jump for Tipperary. In fact, the reason, I believe, also is said or told by Michael, because the Tipperary energy consumption was really high before the project, and this gave a great chance to Tipperary to switch to the smart lighting and also less energy consumption.
So all this is where the starting position that you come from is of course a very big determinant of the gains that you can have. But across the board, good results in the cities. Thanks for demonstrating that, and congratulations to the participating cities with the results that you are achieving already. Aytaç, thanks very much for your contribution for the moment.
Thank you very much, Taco, and see you later.
See you later. Thanks very much. I would like to move to the final chapter of our webinar, which was tentatively titled, Does Light Bring Us Together? It's an interesting question. Can we actually learn and continue working together from this? And here to say a bit more about this is Mark Burton-Page from Lucy. He's the General Director of this international network. Hi, Mark. I actually hear that the motto of Lucy, if I'm not mistaken, is connecting cities with light. So this seems to be a very appropriate motto. Can you tell us how this actually works out in practice when we build on the Smart Space Network?
We'll try to do that. Absolutely. Yeah, so I have shared that screen. Can you see it?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, sorry. Here we are now. Okay, good. Now this this conference has been incredible until now. I've learned a lot, even from that project, still from all of you. So beautiful. I'm here with you just for another, I think, 10, 12 minutes probably. We're a bit late, so I want to make some quick notes. It's been a wonderful project. I'm really glad to be with all of you, and thanks for sticking with us now. As was introduced very kindly, thank you, Taco. I'm the General Director of Lucy. Lucy is an NGO, so it's a non-for-profit organization that's been for 20 years now the international network of cities on urban lighting, gathering 70 cities worldwide, and also connecting more than 50 associate members. And yes, the baseline is connecting cities with light. That's great. You noticed that. Beautiful. I'm reflecting on two questions today. You know, does light bring us together? Well, I think in our webinar, at least, the answer is yes. To build a network, how do we build that and share lessons learned? First, of course, light brings us together because as cities today, we're facing challenges and questions. So that's the first point, the first part. And these challenges and questions are really relevant to us in the field of lighting. And of course, as has been just wonderfully also shown by Aytaç, the first big question is the climate crisis and how urban lighting can help cities achieve their targets. Now, of course, you know, I think lighting accounts for a relatively small part of all the global, you know, GHG emissions every year. But, you know, if we want to reach those targets, every little part counts. So that's very important. Cities want to reduce their carbon emissions, as was also said by Tipperary earlier, with the mayor's covenant, etc. So they're looking at lighting with this incredible potential of energy saving, and that's been demonstrated also by this project with LEDs, but with the added smartness. But so directly linked to that, one of the other challenges is, of course, the fast pace of digitalization and the innovation trends. There's a lot more available technologies, and also we've heard about this this morning in smart lighting, in particular these past few years. But the question is, how do we really leverage these opportunities created by smart lighting to increase our environmental and social sustainability? Okay, it's not only environmental, it's also social sustainability, because we're actually, humans living in cities. And we've touched upon this with Philip's presentation. So another great challenge I see, and we've always pointed, is urbanization trends, because there's more and more of us living in cities. The United Nations says there's 68% people all over the world living in cities, and that's just keeping growing. Sorry, we'll be living in cities by 2050. That's growing and growing. So here in Northwest Europe, we can see this is one of the most densely populated areas of Europe. So the challenge that we have here actually resonate with many other places in the world. Cities that are big, massive sometimes, smaller, they have to provide lighting for citizens, because it's an essential service. It's really even, we can say, a right, a right for everyone. So the question is, you know, do we turn off lights in residential areas? And that's been active in the chat. Also, lots of questions around this, where it's not needed. Of course, you know, after say 10 p.m. or whatever, we know we need to talk about this. How do we work with very small communities and more rural areas that are also connected to the larger cities, hinterlands? You can see here in this picture part of the answer, I think, in that region, I think. Anyway, another challenge for cities is to be vibrant and dynamic, for tourists, for residents, alike, both. Light can be an effective tool to build identity. For example, lighting beautiful heritage sites and landmarks. Also lighting pedestrian and cycle infrastructure, you know, for example, along riversides, I don't know, developing light and art, but also light festivals, perhaps. But there might be also negative impacts of all of this, consequences that we need to measure against this big need that we talked about of light sobriety and this energy efficiency drive. Last but not least, of course, for cities, a big challenge is to think about the nighttime, the nightlife in the city in a global way. You know, night is a specific time of the city that really needs to be considered. At night, you have competing users of the public spaces, those who want to sleep, those who want to work, those who need to work, those who want to play and have fun, of course. This competition, not only between the people, but also between the people and the nature, of course, because a lot of flora and fauna is active at night. And this actually translates into lighting challenges. So how we use light for a multiplicity of usages, for safety, for beauty, for mobility, for green spaces, etc. And a lot of scenarios have been drafted where smart lighting can have an impact here. And yeah, this is what we see in Lucy as a network, that lighting can be a fantastic tool for a sustainable city, a sustainable development with economic, cultural life, also a good environmental opportunities here. But we still have common questions on how to get there. The first question, I think, is, you know, taking light beyond the functional. That's been also a driver, I think, in the lighting world for many years. But of course, light is a functional element. You know, it's an essential, objective functional element for cities, essential for visibility. We've seen that for security, for energy, cost savings, better management, better maintenance, and especially with added smartness. But light is also more and more recognized as benefiting the emotional part of the city, the subjective part of the city, the beauty, the poetry even of the city. You know, so perhaps together we should have deeper, richer conversations about how we want our urban fabric to be like at night. So being together. The next question is how cities take advantage of technologies, without letting the technology drive the vision, the long-term lighting vision in the end. We've seen smart components of lighting need to be integrated in strategic documents. I've heard that. Example in lighting master plans, of course. For that, and smart city master plans, I guess. But for that, perhaps the way forward is multidisciplinary, bringing experts together. I've heard this also, this one. We need to forge better alliances between multiple stakeholders, between, you know, light as an art, but light as a science, together. That goes together, needs to go together, between engineers, designers, for example. Another fundamental question is about how we engage with citizens. You know, some cities have pointed out and repeatedly point out how it's hard to engage with citizens on these questions of urban lighting and go further than, okay, we need more light, oh, we need less light. We can go further than that. Indeed, there are technical aspects, and I think Sila mentioned quite some techniques to go a bit deeper with citizens. And that's wonderful. It's not easy to speak the same language, but really needs some commitment from parties involved to do that. This leads me to my next question, common question still for cities. Several cities suggest that the key to develop better dialogue is also to raise awareness. How the city is lit at night, to better explain the value of lighting. And the awareness raising should be made with everybody, with all the producers of light. In fact, you know, we could say we're all producers of light because citizens are producers of light. but also, of course, not only the public lighting specialists, but the commercial developers, perhaps the shop owners or building developers, etc., to grow a real, culture of light, local and common culture of light. So yes, light brings us together. In the end, building an urban public, an urban lighting public policy is really a balancing act. As a decision makers, we really need to balance, and we've seen that how we balance this security issue, the need for security goals. Lighting norms, perhaps they can be challenged and they can be reviewed in some ways, perhaps adding light to highlight identity and culture, but also the whole issue of, tackling, preventing and eradicating light pollution, but also, all this sustainability agenda and the efficiency and the sustainability goals. I mean, this is today, I don't think we're lost at all because there's a lot of good answers, but this is, however, still a big question for many decision makers. So we need to push these messages up, I think, as much as we can. Now, so you could see these are some of the challenges and the questions that cities face, and I think they wrap up quite nicely what we've had this morning. But what do we do about this collectively? Remember, yeah, I think this is where we go to the second part of my speech, and it's sort of the first one, so don't worry, but how can we make a difference together? Well, I think, cities want to work together on these issues. However, they can't do it by themselves. So they really need to bring together partners and experts to work in cooperation to keep track of innovation, of trends, to benchmark their practices in order to improve the service delivery to citizens. And yeah, cities have a strong need to really find concrete answers from their peers. And this is what we've been doing in some of the smart space project meetings you see here, but also during some incredible, practice and site visits and on-site demonstrations that are essential. Bring people outside, have them see stuff. That's what's most important. That's what we've been doing before COVID, actually doing meetings, doing visits, and working together. Yeah, smiling faces in this picture, and we want to go back to this one day. This is more of our life now. This is how it is today, but also smiling faces and better than nothing. But we really need to see each other. This is from the first Smart Space webinar, I think, and the second one. At Lucy, we also always really believe that the exchange of information is key to make things happen. So especially at this EU level, it's been great with this wonderful project. And this is also why Lucy exists for the past 20 years, and we're involved in these kind of projects. Now, remember, the title of my presentation was, "Does Light Bring Us Together?" I think we can say yes. I've kind of brought some of the answers to that. Now, on the building the network and sharing the lessons learned part, I'm happy to share with you two very exciting outcomes of this project right now. So this we'll do this right now. First, I would like to launch the city's guide to smart lighting that was brilliantly introduced to you by Philip a bit earlier on, and we will publish a link in the chat in a second, just after this presentation. And if you follow that link, you can just download the document and read it, hopefully, in a digital version. If you'd like a paper copy, we can also send it to you. For registered of this participants, just free of charge. And yeah, you can do this directly after the conference if you'd like to. I really encourage you to read this great document. There were many deliverables from the Smart Space project, and I'm getting to this later, but this one I think is special, at least for us. This is a short document, and it's really being made by cities, for cities. So ask for a copy and perhaps send it to your colleagues, your decision makers. We're extremely proud to launch this with you today. And I want to congratulate Philip, the author, also for a presentation earlier, but it has been a fantastic work and a journey to work with cities to produce that by this group of experts and enthusiasts for over 1 year. For us, yeah, it's really projects like these that enable us to go further and to head for improvement and excellence. And this is also why we supported the creation, since the start of this Smart Space project, to the, and it's been referred to a few times in the Smart Space Knowledge Center, which is included in the wider Lucy Hub. Okay, you know, since the start of this project, we've done this online collaboration knowledge exchange tool, and I'll just present that for just a second. What's there? We've gathered over 600 knowledge blocks or knowledge pieces, case studies, presentations, news articles, research reports from everywhere over the world, from the whole Lucy network, but also beyond that. We call them knowledge blocks, okay? And of course, all the Smart Space project deliverables will be there. What's more, you have access to the community of the project, of these wonderful people that have been working together for 3 years. And we've shared in 4 communities of practice around pilot sites, all the sustainability agenda, the smart lighting issues, the citizen involvement, things that I've touched upon, things that most of my colleagues have touched upon. At this time, there's 70 people that are included in the Smart Space Knowledge Center, 35 from cities, 15 from knowledge universities, and 12 from companies, quite like the diversity of people we have right now in this conference. And besides accessing information, we really want people to share their own information. That's how it's supposed to work, I think. We want people to be active users and a resource to your peers. So what can you share? Articles, reports from your city, lessons learned, etc. A question, you can ask a question to the community. We've made it really easy for people to share. So there's a webinar, short webinar you can watch to understand what that is. There's also an app that you can download to use the tool. So it's there. And yes, you're invited to join us. I mean, if you're a lighting expert in the Northwest Europe region, now that I know that that's only part of you now, but if you're in those countries, Ireland, Belgium, Luxembourg, Switzerland, parts of France and Germany and Netherlands, you can ask to join this incredible resource center and collaboration tool. We still have 30 seats left that will really enable you to access all this information for the next 6 months. So feel free to ask for that. There's also a link that will be shared just after that presentation. And I mean, it's a fantastic time to join the conversation. You know, as I think Rianne pointed out, there's a big transition happening. So if you have the information, if you have the right people on board, I think it's better for the future of our cities. I'm totally available for questions, and I'd like to thank you very much for listening to me right now. Thanks.
Thanks very much for this, Mark. I have no doubt in my mind that those participants that were not enthusiastic yet about engaging in the conversation must be now. So thanks for doing this. It's clear that from what we've heard today that there is a lot to be gained from moving to smart lighting, starting out perhaps from energy savings and emissions, but your explanations and examples about atmosphere, social safety, perception, togetherness, art and culture are also very important observations. I think these are important messages from today's conference. And I think looking at what we've talked about and where we stand and the invitation that you just extended, this is an excellent point to wrap up today's dialogue and invite everybody to continue this conversation, either offline or online in different sites and circles. I think from Smart Space, we can say there is a lot to be gained for local authorities from moving to smart lighting. We talked about energy and greenhouse gases and all the qualities that Mark introduced. We've also heard from our speakers and from our participants the need for and the potential for gaining benefits in terms of biodiversity, reduction of light pollution in areas where this is possible. And I think all these elements are qualities that we can actually bring on board if we are smart about developing smart lighting. And I think that a big message is that a smart lighting system is only as smart as we make it. And I think that all the ingredients to make the right decisions there, not only as practitioners, but also with the users and the inhabitants of our cities, are on offer from Smart Space and from Lucy Network. So I think the links are available. The materials and the documentation is available for all of you to start or keep working in this wonderful field of smart lighting. And I encourage you to do so after this conference as well. A recording of this webinar will be available shortly after and shared with you, as will the drawings of our artist in residence, Nienke. And I think this is a good moment to ask her for one last time to share the last remaining picture that she made for us during the second half of the conference, which is again a beautifully crafted, neat and very rich drawing compiling of the elements of the citizen's perspective, the analysis on energy consumption, and very importantly, the invitation to join the Smart Space Knowledge Center. Thank you very much for this, Nienke, for being with us and drawing this all up. Another big thank you to all speakers. We've learned so much from you, from your inspiring stories, your answers to the questions, your dialogues, and your willingness to interact also with our participants. A big thank you to LEF Events, Willem and the crew for making this happen technically. A big thank you to the cities of Oostende as lead partner of the network and the city of Middelburg for organizing this conference, and to all the other partners of the Smart Spaces project for actually making this, this project a reality. And finally, a big thank you to you, the audience, for tuning in, for listening to, and hopefully keep sending on the message of smart lighting as offered to you by Smart Space. We'll leave it with that. Thank you very much for your participation, and we hope to see you somewhere, someone in the future, in real life. Bye.